wasn't even with my neck that was the problem. Appreciate you all being here. Hope everybody had a good 4th of July. Melissa, I guess you're on.
Good morning. To start this budget workshop off on a positive note, as we are beginning this budget cycle, we do see a continued upward growth in the Walton County economy. The current budget draft reflects an increase in taxable property values of 11.9% over last year. And since you've been provided with a draft copy of the budget and have had a chance to review it, and we've been able to discuss this with you, I'll just go over more of an overview before we get into any board discussion on where to go with these different items. The draft focuses on maintaining core services and funding immediate needs that were delayed over the years of declining property values. The budget as presented today assumes no change in the current millage rate of 3.6363 and no changes for the North Walton Mosquito Control District millage rate of 0.4912. Today, the board will need to set a proposed millage rate, and just to go ahead and remind everyone, after today the rate can go down, it cannot go up after today. So just to go through the overview of the total proposed budget, the overall county budget as presented totals $123.7 million. It is approximately a $200,000 decrease from the prior year. The notable items that make up that change are presented, and just to note, the largest of the changes is attributable to the sunset of the sales tax for the 331 bridge in December of this year. Other changes include a decrease in the public works budget. The county was in a good position last year to make an additional investment in some equipment that had been delayed for public works, so they had a larger than usual machinery and equipment request last year, so that decrease in their budget is mostly due to that. We do see a requested increase in the TDC budget, and just to give you a brief summary of that, that's related to an increase in the product development budget, the emerging markets, brand activation campaigns, improvement of beach boardwalks, and the creation of a public relations department. And like I said, there were more items in that, but that's just a brief overview. The sheriff has been allocated the same proportion of the countywide millage as in the fiscal year 15 budget. The sheriff's office had vehicle purchases delayed for several years, and they're still behind on their vehicle rotation. So I know that there are some representatives here today, so if you have any further questions about increases in their budget, they will be here to answer any of those. A cost of living or merit increase is being requested in an amount that would cover a 2% COLA plus a 3% merit. It will be really up to the board how to structure any increase. We included that just to give you an option to work from to structure that. Health insurance premiums are rising 9.9% in the next year for the current plans offered by the county. The current draft as presented allocates this increase to both the county and to the employees. So the county contribution would go up 9.9%, the employee contribution would go up. If the board would like to consider savings on the health insurance, some options would be to change the current coverage. We do have a couple of plans that are grandfathered in under Obamacare, and as long as those plans do not change, we can keep them. But if we go changing plans, you do get into having to comply with Obamacare requirements. Another option would be to change the funding structure and see if some savings could be achieved with that. But for right now, what's in the budget is a 9.9% increase for both the county and the employees. And I want to note that the proposed budget, the numbers that you see, assume that any merit or COLA increases for the sheriff's office and the health insurance increase for the sheriff's office, those are in the increase in the sheriff's budget. It's assumed that those will be absorbed by the budget his budget as presented. So the figures that are presented are for the board and the other constitutional offices only. Fire Rescue's budget includes the absorption of Freeport Fire Department that happened last fiscal year, or this fiscal year. Lease payments for machinery and equipment have not increased for fiscal year 2016. Current notes are paid in full and equipment rolls off of the funding is rolling for those items, we are looking at replacing them and keeping the payment amounts essentially the same. What is in the current budget would allow the department to replace 2 ambulances, and this is 2 ambulances that have between 200 and 300,000 miles, and one 1999 fire engine. And it's the one that's become difficult to maintain because they're having trouble finding parts for it. Planning's proposed budget has increased due to 1 FTE transferring from GIS to the planning department. 1 additional planner was added during the current fiscal year, and we are also requesting 1 more planner be added in fiscal year 16 just because of the uptick in the work that they are doing down there. Also included in their request is a transportation concurrency management plan update. And to roll through the FTE changes, the sheriff's office has we see a total change of 44 FTEs for the requested for the year. The sheriff's office has requested 8. That's 6 deputies, and he wants to convert some part-time positions, some animal control and IT position and a crime scene tech from part-time to full-time. The clerk's office has requested 2 FTEs. 1 is court-funded and has no impact on the county budget. The other is an IT position that would be county-funded. GIS, as we discussed, had the transfer of an FTE to planning. Planning's increase is the 1 from GIS, the 1 added in 15, and 1 more request for 16. Fire Rescue, they added 7 FTEs due to the absorption of Freeport Fire Department. 8 more are requested, and these are directly related to the Obamacare employer mandate, which is going to kick in for the county on October 1st when our health insurance plan begins. And basically, we'll have a look-back period of 12 months, and after 12 months, if an employee has worked more than 30 hours a week, the county will be required to offer them health insurance for 12 months at the same benefit that is paid for all other employees. So at this point, since the firefighters work 24-hour shifts, if they work a little more than 1 shift a week on average, the county is going to be paying the benefit for them for a year anyway. So at that point, it becomes more cost-effective to look at bringing on some relief firefighters full-time and reduce reliance on relief firefighters and overtime hours. The addition in Public Works is for the employees that were hired to work on the FEMA projects, and they're primarily paid out of the FEMA funding. And the TDC has added 8 positions due to both reorganization and the addition of a public relations department. And since, as I said, you've already been briefed on the budget, I won't take the time to go through each additional budget. I do want to take a moment to mention the cost allocation plan. Maximus Consulting prepared a formal plan based on 2014 financial information and interviews with county staff. Currently, this plan is in draft form, and I had sent you all the draft copy of it to review. I also sent it to our external auditor for his review. If this plan becomes a formal part of the county's financials, then the auditors would test this as a part of our annual audit, but he did not express any initial concerns with the allocation, the basis for the allocations. The document was prepared in accordance with full costing principles and with an approved plan that is within federal guidelines. The county can request reimbursement of administrative costs allocable to federal grants. That'll include Restore Act funds. We're looking into how that would work for Section 8 funds to recoup the county's cost of administering the indirect cost of administering the program. This plan can also be used to reimburse BCC administrative costs for future MSBUs projects taken on by the board. It really just gives the board flexibility to recoup allocable administrative overhead costs. If the board does wish to approve the plan as part of the proposed budget, I would bring back a final copy of the report at a regular scheduled board meeting to request approval of it. So we would have that and be able to, when FEMA comes in, we'd be able to present that to them to request reimbursement. And just to move ahead, to wrap this up so we could get into any discussion. I tried to peel back the discretionary revenues and expenses to really get to what the board is able to use for their programs and projects. And when you get back, when you take everything that is funded as we've discussed today, and all the departments at the current levels, the amount remaining for optional items is $1.284 million. If the board would like to structure any increases for employees, we have allowed $750,000 for the cost of that. And if y'all,
out of that 1.28.
yes, ma'am, out of the 1.28. And what was trickier about this budget is we do have the tax increment financing district starting this year. And without that set amount to go into that, I really did not know how deeply to cut the other programs or how exactly how to work the rest of the budget. So what I did is just worked backwards, got to the $1.284 million, deducted the $750,000 if the board wishes to for increases for employees. That would leave $534,000 remaining. We do request the board set the level of funding desired in the coming year for the 30A and Highway 98 tax increment trust fund so we can proceed in see how we need to move forward with the budget. The Highway 331 TIF area actually decreased in value over the past year due to the land going to the DOT for the widening of 331. So there will be no tax increment value for the coming year for that. One option just for next year will be to change the base year since we did have a decrease and start the base year at the lowest year. So that's something that we will look into, we can look into for next year. In summary, and a lot of this is actually when you get to the other items for consideration, when you read through that, you're going to hear a lot of what I had put in there. We've got stormwater needs throughout the county. The current infrastructure fund is budgeted at slightly over $1 million for fiscal year 16. Current year revenues are just under $1 million. The Restore Act funding, we're not at the point where it's been formally awarded where we can put it into the budget. So Restore Act funds have not been included in this. We've got the landfill transfer station in need of renovation or expansion to accommodate the increasing volume in garbage for years to come. Funding will be needed to perform required work for the Habitat Conservation Plan if the permit is approved by the DEP. We've got aging infrastructure with rising demands, as you all know, on the infrastructure that's currently in place. What we've tried to do with this budget, we do have aging equipment and vehicles and facilities. So we've taken care to try to meet the most immediate needs. As our vehicles get older and are replaced, we try to just replace the ones that are justifiable budget-wise. Maintenance costs are high, and if there's somewhere that we can shift that vehicle to where they just mostly do local travel, we're shifting those around to get as much use as we can out of them. Next year, we are looking at a possible mandate for new equipment for the supervisor of elections. And I just wanted to mention this because I did see it in the news the other day, so I kind of wanted to let y'all know what we're looking at on that. The estimated cost would be around $500,000. Like I said, it'd be next year's budget. And an option is to lease the equipment. That might spread out the cost and keep the county from investing as much in equipment that could become outdated in just a few years. County staff is also looking for options to store the equipment, because along with all that new equipment will come the need for climate-controlled storage space. One thing that did start to hit us this year is we're seeing communication and technology expenses increase. Microsoft is changing their billing structure. That will hit us next year. So we're going to have to purchase individual subscriptions for Office. So just things like that are coming up that are increasing the cost. So staff is continuing to look for ways to absorb these costs and find strategies to meet the challenges that hit us. If the board would like to explore the possibility, one thing that we could do is we do request that we review the current structure of the fees for the planning department, and one option is to see how much those services cost and if there's a way to alter the structure to recoup some of the actual cost of providing the services. It would be similar to what we did with the cost allocation plan. They would actually capture all the cost of what it takes to do the permits and see just what the difference is between the fees and the costs. So we're continuing to look for grant opportunities. We are on the mailing list for the state and the feds to go through those, and Angie does send those out every month. She gets the list of all the grant opportunities, and if any are a fit for any of the departments, she goes ahead and sends them out to review. So we do need to, as these funding opportunities come up, we need to stay ready to compete for them. And again, the Restore Act funds have not been included in the proposed budget. The board did direct that the $5.2 million in the first round of the funds be utilizably for stormwater projects throughout the county. So we have some good news this year. We do see an increase in the economy. We see upward movement in the economy, and we have looked at how to maintain core services in this budget and fund immediate needs. And if the board would like to review, to talk further about any of the items or any of the departmental budgets as we move along in this workshop, how would y'all like we can proceed?
Commissioner Meadows.
Yes, I have a couple questions, Melissa. Do you have any idea what our outstanding code fines are?
I don't off the top of my head.
That's one thing I would like to see us do is collect some of those fees, because I think those could be fed back into planning, I think.
Yes, ma'am. We've been looking at over a long period of time now, quite frankly, how many are still out there, how many have actually been reduced to lien that we could possibly foreclose to try to recoup fees. We don't believe we have them all yet, but we've been working on that a pretty good while. I'll get more Melissa about some strategies about how to do that outside of foreclosure. There might be other ways. I've talked to some other counties about that possibility. One of the things we've now discovered is that these code enforcement liens, if properly recorded, operate as a lien not only on the property in violation, but any other property owned by the violator. So we're going to look at some strategies about doing good old-fashioned collections, just like you would with any other debt collection.
Let's see. The other question I have is, what would you have to raise the millage rate to equal $1 million? What would that be?
It would be roughly 0.1.
0.1?
Well, 0.08. 0.08 is getting us just over $1 million in the stormwater fund.
Okay, so 0.08 still represents about $1 million.
About $1 million,
kind
yes,
of what
ma'am.
we were talking about last year.
It's very close.
Okay. And the comments that I have are, I'd like to hear the audience too, but the budget looks good for a basic budget, but what I don't see is, I'm glad about the stormwater maintenance crews, because this is the first time I've ever seen that in a budget. I think that's great. there's nothing in there for paving beyond a mile in each district. There's nothing in there for the stormwater management fixes that are going to be around, I think, 40 million. Can't do all that in 1 year, but there's nothing in there for additional multi-use paths, bridge repair, sidewalks, overlay of 30A, the balance of which is needed, and getting the files in the planning department to a central file location with some kind of check-in, check-out system so that we don't get into that situation again. And those are my comments. There's just this is a basic budget. It's the same model that we've used year after year. It does not provide any of the severe infrastructure needs that we have in South Walton. There's some, of course, in North Walton as well. My comments would be that, we need to come up with some kind of a model to address these infrastructure needs and not wait for the state grants to come in, which takes years. Not count on restore money for that. It may come in, it may not. So we just can't keep kicking that can down the road. I think we're at a watershed time period right now. Those are my, the other thing too is, dealing in the planning department. The planning department needs an additional FTE for an environmental planner. That would allow things to move much faster in the planning department. The environmental department in the county is totally swamped. They have enough to say grace over. So in talking to the planning department and asking them what would help there, an environmental planner stationed in the South Walton Annex with the planning department was one of the answers. And then just as an aside, I would like to see any restore money that comes in put in a separate account so that we can see what's being spent, what is being spent on, and how that money is being spent, and so that we can see. We also have a lot of other accounts that you don't really see in the budget: the prop share funds, the recreation plat fees, the sidewalk funds, the preservation fund. So I think we need to look at each of those and decide how we're going to fund basically sidewalks and beyond the prop share accounts, which give you a little bit of money but not enough to really do anything substantial with. So at this time, I think that's the only thing I have to add to what y'all have done, Melissa. And you've done a great job at this. Again, the TIF funding is primarily set up to address infrastructure in South Walton. And so I think that we need to look at that fund as a serious fund in order to put the money back in to the areas in which the increment is coming from as far as infrastructure, roads, and drainage. So that's my comments for right now.
Commissioner Chapman.
Melissa, concerning the TIF account for 30A, I think it was a significant amount of money, over $3 million for this coming year. If all that funding was applied strictly to the TIF, how would that impact the regular county budget?
That's what I was trying to get back to with the discretionary revenue and expense summary. When you peel off, say, the TDC, the funds that don't really impact the building department, the funds that really don't impact the distribution of ad valorem taxes, you get back to the revenues that are listed on the spreadsheet. Then when you start backing out the allocation to the sheriff's office, the other constitutional offices, required court support, audit fees, the property and liability insurance, capital projects debt service, and utilities. I've tried to peel off the things that we've got to pay. I know that the constitutional office funding there, that is set by the board, but things like the utilities, we kind of have to pay it, and the property insurance. I peeled those off, and then I turned around and peeled off the public works, facilities and parks maintenance, and custodial and landfill operating expenses. I peeled those off. Now those can be cut, but I went ahead just for illustrative purposes, left them at the requested amounts. That leaves $18,894,000. Then you get down to the board programs. To allocate more than the $1.284 million to the TIF, and now any COLAs or merit, any kind of pay increases are included in that amount. If you go beyond that amount, something would either have to be cut or revenues would have to be an offset somewhere.
Okay. Commissioner Meadows, I understand what you're talking about as far as stormwater and all that, but it's a county-wide issue. And the monies just for the south end was close to $40 million. And I'm not sure what it would be up here in the northern part of the county. But if you're advocating that we go ahead and start that process of attacking those, which is well and good, is I'm trying to figure out how we can do it and do it in a timely manner. Even if you're only getting about $3 million, we'll say, we'll round it up to $4 million a year. And with $40 million, you're looking at 10 years. So it's whether or not we want to even consider doing an accelerated program, whether it means going out and borrowing money. That's going to be to get it all accomplished as soon as possible. That's something the board is going to have to decide and look at, is whether that's
and payments for any debt service we can make payments for debt service from the TIF, but you cannot use the TIF as to back the loan. It cannot be the primary
Let me
revenue
add to
source.
that too. I think what the thought process is pay as you go.
Yes.
You can, it would be done in-house or either by consultants or contractors, but you wouldn't be able to do everything. You do your major problems first, and then you would go from there. Some of these stormwater problems I've talked to them have minor fixes, so we could do that. But you wouldn't be looking at spending all that in 1 year. I mean, you would be looking at phasing things in and doing things because, as we know, you can get contractors in, but you have to have somebody to manage the contractors. So there's only so much work I think that can physically and reasonably be done in a year. But I think, and so that's the thinking in that, is that the funds would be adequate for addressing a pay-as-you-go system where you could fix the most egregious issues that are happening, and I don't know what the 52 places that the engineers looked at. I don't know how many of those are south of the Bay, how many are north of the Bay, but that's what we're looking at, is not borrowing any money,
okay.
but being able to use those funds to address those most egregious issues.
Okay, my other comments deals with fire rescue. Mm-hmm. If you look at the command structure of the fire rescue, most of them are within 5 years of retirement, and there is no succession planning that I'm aware of within the fire district, fire rescue. And I think it's probably appropriate for the commission to start looking at allowing those positions to be funded, and so we can have somebody can step up whenever that captain leaves or that assistant chief or battalion chief leaves or whatever the case. And until you get you got to do that, in my opinion. We did it at the sheriff's office. They're still continuing to do it at the sheriff's office. So you've got to plan on retirements. Unfortunately, death factors in there occasionally. illnesses, cancers, whatever it may be. And you need to have that person to step up at that time to be able to handle the duties. It's not only just creating a position, you got to train them for that position. So we need to consider that, admin staff to start looking at that. Second thing is in reference to the TDC. With a 14-point-something% increase over last year, I'm trying to figure out why we need 8 more people, especially on the PR. And Mr. Bagby, you're out there. I'll yield to you and let you try to explain to me why we need that.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chapman. Commissioner Chapman, I appreciate that. A little background, we went back and did an analysis over the last 10 years on our staffing levels. We talked to about 40 people, both our peer organizations, people within the destination, people within the organization. We've grown in the since 2007, 87%. Our workload, production load has grown 87%. Our growth in our organization has been 30%. In 2007, we had in the admin side 18 people, and on the beach side 13 people. This year, we have 16 people on the admin side and 23 people on the beach side. Next year, we're proposing that we go up to 23 people. 16 on the admin side and 24 on the beach side this year. We're proposing that we go up to 22 people, which over 10 years from 18 to 22, you can see that's a very small growth, particularly with the explosion of the internet, social media, and all the other things that we're responsible for. So on the, and we're going to 29, proposing that we go to 29 people on the beach side. So you can see in 10 years, we're going from 13 proposed to 29. And on the PR, or on the specific question of the PR, one of the things we do very well is marketing and external public relations. One of the things we don't do well at all is internal public relations. There's a perception of the community that all we do is bring tourists in and it doesn't matter who we bring in. That's not, I know y'all know that's not true. We try to bring in people within our target demographic. People, household incomes, ages 35 to 64 with household incomes above $175,000, and 65, families 65 and older with a net worth over $1 million. If you ask the average person in Walton County, what's the TDC doing, they won't tell you that, or they don't know that the TDC is funding the beach safety program at your direction to the tune of $765,000. They don't know that the TDC is funding the offshore reef that y'all approved to the tune of $210,000 this year. They don't know that the TDC is spending $300,000 this year on the bike path maintenance and repair. They don't know that we have in our budget $250,000 to do some stormwater issues, along with, I believe, $650,000 on bike path repair and replacement just of the surface of the asphalt. So there are the $25,000 that you approved for the very successful Topsail parking area, the $11,000 that you approved for the parking lot across from Ed Wallin. So there are a lot of things. There is a void, and we need to fill that void with the Public Relations Department. Okay. We used to have a Public Relations Department. When Tracy Louthan was here, she was the head of PR. And then my predecessor combined some things, and that was her right.
Okay, well, let me just take them one at a time.
Okay,
sure. I understand your PR, what you're talking about.
Yes,
there.
sir.
What's a brand coordinator? We got a brand that's all over the dang world. Why are we needing a brand coordinator for that?
Well, and all these things that we do out of market, that's their responsibility. So when we're talking to media in Nashville, New York, Chicago, things like that, that would be the brand coordinator's responsibility.
Who's doing that now? We
send
people all over.
Well, it's in the marketing department right now and our agency. And a lot of the positions that we are not necessarily in the beach ops, but specifically in the PR and in the marketing, those positions, what they are designed to do is we spent, as an example, $76,000 last month to our agency in New Orleans on work outside of their, it's in their contract, but it's charged at the hourly rate because it's not ad placement and the things that they normally get their 12% off of. So you extrapolate that out over a year, that's a lot of money. We believe, sincerely believe, that a lot of that work, or at least a good portion of that work, could be done here by people in Walton County, living in Walton County, making a lot less than $110 an hour to do that. And so when the growth on the administrative side, a lot of that, particularly in the marketing, PR, sales, is directly tied to saving money that we would be sending to our agency.
Have you, I would assume you sent a detailed line item concerning these new positions to Melissa?
Yes, sir, we sure have.
I would like that
To
copy.
include job descriptions and
Breakdown,
everything.
job description, the whole 9 yards.
Everything.
Now, in regard to what your increases are too, one thing that we've always had an issue with, and it's always coming up, is code enforcement. I see no additional people here for code enforcement.
No, sir, there's 2 additional part-timers for code enforcement, and actually we were going to use
budget?
retired, yes, sir. We were going to use retired sheriff's deputies or
It wasn't
FBI or.
identified- It's not identified in what I've got here that you're talking about code enforcement. All I see is one beach specialist, whatever that may be.
I don't know what Melissa gave you, but I know I can give you what we submitted.
What is listed as director PR, one brand coordinator, one content curator, one info specialist, one assistant project manager, one admin assistant, one purchase travel coordinator, and one beach specialist.
Okay, she didn't, and probably due to space, I don't want to speak for her, but we are also adding 2 additional seasonal facility maintenance specialists. Okay, so that would be people picking. One of the things we've tried to do in this budget is, it's no secret, we have a surge from spring, from March 1st to September 1st. So we added 2 seasonal facility maintenance specialists. Those are the folks that help us repair our bathrooms, keep them clean. We added 2 additional, we already have 2 seasonal maintenance, beach specialists, 2 seasonal maintenance, I'm going to say it wrong again, 2 seasonal beach specialists. We added an additional 2, which would take us to 4 is what we're proposing, to work during the season. We added 2 seasonal code enforcement officers, okay, which would, we would hope, we've had conversations about retired military or retired sheriff's deputies or whatever. We would see them filling that role. And on the seasonal, we took the full-time beach ambassador position, which never was probably properly utilized during the off-season, and we made that 2 seasonal beach ambassador positions in our recommended budget, because what we're trying to do is get the people there when they need to be there and not have people that we have to find work for in the off-season. So the seasonal position, I think those are all the seasonal positions, and they probably weren't captured. But those are, every 2 of those is considered an FTE also.
Commissioner Kennedy.
Well, I'll start with the TDC being he's standing there. To the outsider,
Yes, ma'am.
and I'm just going to be as frank as I can be, it looks like you're trying to create a kingdom here. We need, you talk about, what'd you read off, a PR person. We've got a PR person sitting back there. If he needs, an assistant to help you, then we hire an assistant. So, because there are only so many press releases you can write about the TDC in a week's time. This other brand marketing, we need to get back and fix some of our problems. We cannot continue to ask people to come here when our infrastructure needs to be fixed, when our stormwater needs to be fixed. We're overloaded now. People are coming. I'm getting emails. They're angry because they can't get anywhere, or they can't get to the beach, or they have vendors blocking their way. They're not coming back. So I think we need to take a step back in the TDC and say, let's fix our problems, let's clean our house, open those windows, and let's dust the furniture off before we start inviting more people to come. I think you need more code enforcement. I totally agree with that, and probably need more beach cleaners. but your administrative staff, I'm a little concerned with. I mean, just because the TDC has the money, that doesn't mean you need to spend it. We need to take a step back and look at, and I'm actually, Lord knows, somebody write it down. I'm agreeing with Ms. Harris. We need to take a look at decreasing the bed tax. If we've got this much money that we're creating jobs, then we need to take a step back and look at what we're doing. On another note, now that I'm through chewing you up one side and down the other, we desperately need money. Is right with that landfill out there. Now that is one of the things that we cannot continue to ignore. We've got to get that MRF fixed. That is a priority for all of Walton County. Infrastructure, I agree with Commissioner Meadows. We need to start looking at ways that, and I am always the last one to want to raise taxes, but we do have some immediate needs in this county that we need to look at. Now, Commissioner, the restore funds you were talking about, they have to be in a separate account. There is no, the feds won't let us do anything different. So, and I'm concerned that Mark is overwhelmed. He didn't ask for it, or if you did, I didn't see it in your budget. He's got to have another person to keep up with these records requests. It's getting, Janera's going to quit. And when she does, we're up the creek, because she's good at what she does, but she just can take so much. So, I mean, I know you didn't request it, but to me, you need somebody to give her relief in your office.
I appreciate that, and I share your concern about the workload she has. I will tell you one of the things we're looking at to avoid a new person. One of the things we're looking at is, computer software doesn't solve every issue, but we're looking at some software that is very inexpensive that will help us receive, process, and do it in a little more automated fashion. Right now, it's very, very the process is very, very person-driven. It takes people, all three of Sydney, myself, and Janera have to physically look at a number of documents just about in every request. So we're trying to look at some alternatives other than another person to speed those up. I agree with you. They're slow. We try our best to contact people, talk to them, tell them where we are in the process. But right now, I think we can survive another year without adding a person. But if the numbers and I have some hope with some settlement of some lawsuits, frankly, that the number of requests that we get will either taper off or go down. In fact, we're beginning to see a little bit of that right now. So I just don't want to jump in there and add another person at this point.
But I guess what I see
appreciate the
is,
sentiment.
like emails, they've got to be looked at physically to take a person's social security number off, to take a person's private information off. I mean, to me, a computer software is not going to solve your problem.
Well,
you need eyeballs.
There are some programs out there actually that do, and I was surprised by the relative inexpensive nature of those programs. That do redaction for you automatically of certain things. They pick it up through a scanning process. And we're going to look at that. I mean, we're going to actually do a little trial basis on a couple of pieces of software. But I will tell you there is good news. The numbers are actually slowing down a little bit, and that's, again, partly because of the number of we're accelerating getting settlements and getting cases to trial, so we're not having as many public records requests related to those. I tell you where they're going up, which has me captured, is Ella and I were discussing a couple of weeks ago. We're getting a number of public records requests for personnel files, and they are very labor intensive because of the medical information is contained.
Otherwise, the emails, what kind of emails would have people's social security number other than personnel files? I mean, why would you put your social security number on an email? And why would you email something personal that would have to be redacted on your county email?
Don't you get your pay thing by email?
No, I do not. No, I do not. No.
Plus get an email once every 2 weeks and it has all that information.
Well, because you have yours probably deposited. See, I don't know. I don't do that because you know. I grew up in, my parents are off the grid, and so, no, I get the check, I take it to the bank, I want to make sure it's in my hand, and I want to see them deposit. Yeah, so, but I'm just saying is that,
One of the labor-intensive things that we have to do is there are a number of exemptions for, they're not confidential, but they're exemptions for addresses, phone numbers. You'd be surprised the number of
Okay.
emails have that. For
Okay.
people who, former FBI, former oddly
Right.
enough, former postal workers, former law enforcement. And we have to check, that's very labor-intensive. We have to sit down and check that
Check
list we
everything.
have against every email. I mean, it's getting better because we're doing it more and more and more and more, so we're getting a little more efficient with it, but it's still, it's
Pretty
still taking
labor-intensive.
time. Yeah, and again, we try our best to turn them around fast, and a lot of them we can turn around real fast just with a quick email, and we're learning how to separate those as well. So I appreciate Commissioner Commander's sentiment, but I think we're dealing with it, and we're hoping it doesn't catch up with us this year, but I think we'll be okay.
That's, for now, that's,
I have another.
Let me get Commissioner
go ahead.
Jones to
I'm
jump in
sorry.
first, then I'll get back to you, Commissioner Meadows.
Equipment, I know when times were really,
put your thing on.
when times were really hard, we probably didn't replace a lot of the equipment. I'd like to see a schedule, if we could possibly get on a schedule. I know in my district, I have equipment constantly in the shop, and it's really hard for us, and I haven't had a chance to talk to Wilmer about our needs, but I know we need graders or, you know, and so if we could get on a schedule of buying equipment, that would be great. On the TDC issues, I met with Mr. Bagby yesterday, and we talked a lot about, in some of the job descriptions, there's overlays, and I really, instead of hiring new people, I would really like to see more coordination and communication with current staff that's already doing that job, and see if we can't improve, and, you know, you express, you know, what deficiencies you're feeling, and maybe we can use current staff continually to continue those. I asked you yesterday if you had enough spaces, enough offices for all these people, and, you know, on the code enforcement side, I think that's a great idea, but as far as staff, you know, it's a matter of prioritizing and thinking of, you know, the direction. We've been going one way where we want people, now we have them. So maybe we, you know, could look at, do we want to continue to market South Walton so much? Maybe we could go in a different direction, not totally stop, but of, you know, we get people down here and they don't have a place to park, they don't have, you know, accesses, so maybe I would love to see as much land as we could buy right now. So that's kind of how the direction I would like to go in the TDC.
And I appreciate it, Commissioner and Commissioner Commander's comments. We'll relook. We did talk to current staff. They're the ones that told us we needed to add this position. It wasn't just me sitting in my office going, how can I, and then going and out and figuring out how to justify it. Our staff, we talked to our emerging leaders, and we talked to the directors as part of that group of 30, 40 folks, and they're the ones that told us, this is what we need to help. You know, we haven't grown. We were, again, 7 or 10 years ago, we were at 18, and now we're at 16, and just imagine the changes that you've had in your life, technology related, with the internet and social media and things like that. Again, most of on the admin side, that work's going to get done. We're going to curate people commenting on the website, you know, user-generated content. So when they add, somebody's got to do that. Right now, we have a rotating schedule between all the people in the marketing and our agency in New Orleans. And when the people in the agency in New Orleans, it's $110 an hour for them to curate social commentary on our website and on our Facebook page and on our Twitter account and all this other stuff at $110 an hour. We think that we're actually going to improve our product and save us money by bringing those services in-house. If we don't bring them in-house, the work is still going to be done. With respect to the maintenance, I agree with entirely. We have over $2.5 million in this budget alone recommended for the bike path area. We have the $300,000 for Valley Crest, or $332. We have $650 for repair and replacement of the asphalt because where it's cracking, where the grass has grown up through it, where the edges have cracked, and we have another $250,000 for associated stormwater drainage improvements along the bike path when we go in there and resurface or replace the bike path. So we heard you, we heard the people. We're trying to meet that need the best we can in our recommended budget. But we'll
Well,
relook it and see if there, and talk with each of you individually to see, what changes we can make.
Well, if you hire this person in-house, are you going to do away with the firm in New Orleans?
No, ma'am, the firm in New Orleans has a contract. It's a base contract, and they get 12% of like ad placements, and y'all approved I believe the first renewal last month. What we won't do is all this add-on work, because in their contract, everything that we ask them to do other than that's not within the 12% box, they do, but they do it at $110 an hour. That's their flat rate, and it doesn't matter if it's the head of the company, Jeff Zender, who probably makes a lot more than $110 an hour, or somebody that they're paying $40 an hour to do it. It's a flat rate, and that's how agency contracts work, the same way with the PR contract. So what we think is it's more cost efficient if we do it here in Walton County internally, as opposed to let it be done in New Orleans or Baton Rouge or Nashville where they have offices.
Commissioner Meadows.
Yeah, a couple of other things. I would like to say that I think one of the ways, last year, I added it up, last year or the last 2 years maybe, we got $21 million from state funding. That's a lot of money. I mean, that's a huge percent. So if you said our budget was 124 last year, you have to add another 21 to that and say that our budget was 145. And that's state funding for rural projects and for Mossy Head and stuff that we got when we lobbied. I think one of the things that needs to be done is that we need to lobby heavier for infrastructure in South Walton, and we need to possibly talk to our legislative delegation about how do we get DOT and some of these grant programs, how do we get them for areas that the population's in and improve some of those things while keeping the rural programs. But I think there's such a disparity because what's happening is you're getting a very skewed picture of improvements, and so they've basically the legislature's basically kind of said, well, you're getting all this money for rural and this, so you go ahead and pay for the rest of this. Well, we're not going ahead and paying for the rest of it at this time. We're paying for a little bit of it. So that's kind of one of my thoughts. And I think, too, that one of my questions was, so lobbying for South Walton infrastructure, I think is huge. I think the EDA funds should not come out of the ad valorem taxes. They should come out of some kind of fund that's set up that we are getting from our marketing efforts. Some of these firms coming in, some of the things that they're paying for, I think that should pay for the EDA. I think that because there are so many unknowns and there's so much to discuss, and this is a critical budget year, I think that we need to hold this same meeting in South Walton, and I think we need to talk about some of these things because we have an audience here, but we need to talk about some of these things in South Walton, I think, as well, because I think that would only be fair to the citizens of Walton County to hear the budget in their area as well. So would that be, and the other thing, too, is I saw the Maximus report that said that the TDC would be paying about $980,000 for administrative services from Walton County. Is that what I'm reading correctly? So,
$950.
Yes, ma'am, that
Yeah.
is correct. It's $950, I believe. Yes, ma'am.
okay, so what percentage of that is what percentage of that bed tax revenue, I guess that's how it's read.
The percentage of TDCs,
Well, they said up to 3% could be used for admin. What percentage is that?
The 3% is for collections of the TDT. The administrative overheads covered by a different statute, but that
Okay.
winds up if, and this is just a round number off of a $22 million budget, it's about 4%.
So 4%. So okay. But it said up to. Now, are you talking about the percentage of the collections?
The 3% applies to on the TDT collections that the clerk's office does. Yes, ma'am.
Right. So that's now at 4%. You're saying?
No, ma'am.
No,
The
okay.
administrative overhead
Is
is a
4%.
separate piece. Yes, ma'am.
And
covered
what
by a separate
percent
statute.
is the TDT?
They're at the 3% unless the board changes the
Okay,
percentage. I
okay.
know they did a separate cost allocation study.
Okay, so between the two, that's about $1.2 million. So I guess my question is, so the county admin we're spending $1 million administrating TDC, whatever. Is that what we're saying?
Yes, ma'am, and that covers.
That's what the report reflects. Okay, so $1 million, that's a heck of a lot of money, and I hope that the TDC is getting their money's worth, because $1 million worth of staff time and work, that's a heck of a lot of staff time and work. So I think that number is severely inflated. That's my opinion. That's a lot of money to pay for administrative services. You could probably contract those out for a quarter of that if you had to. So one of my points is making the TDC privatizing is I think you could save a lot of money, a lot of time, and be way more efficient, because I think $1 million is a little much for administrative costs for the TDC, especially based on my experience with what they do and how much is involved. So that would be my other point. But before we set a millage rate, I would like us to have a meeting in South Walton. And I think that's only fair and balanced.
We have a state time frame that is going to require it before that, I think. But anyhow, Mr. Chapman, Commissioner Chapman has some questions too, so go ahead, Mr. Chapman.
Okay.
I'm done, Jim.
Oh,
you done?
yes, sir, I'm sorry. Thank you.
So I would like to discover that, because I'd like to have another meeting in South Walton. I think it's critical that we discuss all these issues with both places.
And as Mr. Infeld said, we do have the state timeline, the trim time frame to work
And what
with
is
them.
that?
We need to have that to them. It's within the next couple of weeks.
Okay, well, we could certainly have.
The
It's the
deadline?
15th, I believe. I was wanting to check it to make
Well,
sure.
we could certainly have a budget session on the 14th when we have our meeting.
And also as an option, today's, if the board did want to go ahead and set a millage, you're not locked into it. It can, however you set it, it can always be lowered. It just
Right.
can't be raised.
Right, and I know that, but that's like the
Yes, ma'am.
$64,000 question. I mean, there's a lot to be determined. I'd like to find out how many of those stormwater projects are north of the bay and how many of them are south of the bay. Let me check my emails, because I sent a note to. But I think that we need to add on budget discussion at the July 14th meeting in South Walton.
As part of the meeting or separate? I know we have 3 o'clock, we have stormwater.
Right, exactly. And I don't care. It is whatever, stormwater can last an hour and the budget could start at 4. But I just think that,
Notice issue?
Can we do stormwater in 30 minutes and then budget?
I think we can do stormwater in, I don't know, you're going to have to ask the guys about how long the stormwater is going to last. I mean, I think that stormwater is going to need an hour.
If we got it out, yeah, that's right. We have a 5-day notice requirement, but if we got it out today, we could have the special meeting, yes.
Do you think we could do stormwater and budget in an hour?
I think we need to re-advertise.
Just come for lunch.
Well, I think what you do is, stormwater's at 3. Start the budget at 4 and go from there.
The regular meeting starts at what? 4.
About 2.
is the only way. Because
That's
I
the
already
only way
told
to
we
do
have a
it.
long agenda.
That's the only way to do it. And I think heretofore, we should plan on having budget meetings in both areas. I mean, I think that's something that's needs to be done just automatically. But I'll show up whatever time y'all decide, but I think it's critical. I'll be there. Hey, I'll be there at 6 a.m. if you want.
So y'all want to do budget at 2 and stormwater 3 and meeting at 4?
I'd rather do stormwater at 3 and then start the meeting with the budget hearing, with a budget discussion for 30 minutes or 45 minutes, and then go into the regular meeting. Because there's not that much in the regular meeting.
Oh, it's a long one.
Yeah, Dee Dee's already told me it's a long
I
one.
think we'll have a big crowd, and I think it'll go pretty long.
Yeah,
Well, then, what a more perfect time to have a budget discussion.
I think at 2 o'clock would enable us to get through the budget, and then at 3 o'clock the stormwater, and then at 4 o'clock the regular meeting. So, what's your preference?
2, 3, and 4, as far as I'm concerned.
No, I
Okay.
mean, not,
2, 3, and 4? 2, 3, and
because
4.
we've got to have a couple of breaks in there, I'm not getting any younger.
Okay. Commissioner Chapman, did you have other questions?
No, not questions, just a couple of comments. Anybody who's visited the landfill in the last several months is going to realize there's been a change out there. And Jeff, I think you're in there somewhere. Yeah, there you are. As far as cleaning it up, making it look as good as it can look for a landfill. The biggest eyesore and the biggest concern I have out there is that transfer station. It is inadequate. It's better than 20 years old, I believe, and it is deteriorating real bad. And we've got to start looking at what it's going to take to put a new transfer station in out there, and maybe to include the Dirty Murph if we're going to start trying to recycle some of those stuff that you can still sell and make some money off of. But that's one thing I wanted to comment about is for staff to start looking at this landfill out there and that transfer station, and let's try and get that thing upgraded. I'm concerned about the safety. You got inmates that's out there doing some sorting, but you got heavy equipment in the same location, so it's very dangerous. I was out there whenever it became overloaded with garbage, and we had to put a excavator in there to try and move the garbage around so it could be moved to the trucks. And the top of the excavator boom only had about 6 inches of clearance before it could have tore down a whole girder system in there. So it's in dire need of an upgrade and an update, and I would like staff to continue looking at that. And just what Melissa said about Bobby Beasley's office, having sat on the canvassing board last year during the election and all that, they do have some aged equipment. It's probably 1998, I think. It was fortunate during the general election that there was some spare card readers there. Otherwise, there have been precincts in this county that would not have been able to complete all their voting. And it needs to be replaced. It's going to be expensive. We know that. But we need to start looking at next year's budget, trying to factor it in there, because it's very difficult. They have to send it off if they ain't got the part, and it takes some time for it to get back where you can even put it in use, and you don't want that to happen during the election cycle. Other than that, that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Can I make a comment about the landfill? In 2008, my last year in office the first time, we had $5 million in the budget for that. We went out and looked at it. It was gonna get done, and then somehow something happened. That $5 million went away. It never got done. Once again, putting off these infrastructure needs and not paying for them, not biting the bullet and saying, let's do it now, leads to that kind of thing.
Yeah, I believe at that point in time when the board was getting a line of credit from the bank, that was one of the things they were going to use the line of credit for. Since they didn't spend it, the line of credit didn't get as high as it would have, and so when that line of credit ceased, that went away there. But it was in part of the borrowing from that $30 million issue back then. Okay, I'd like to take public comments.
I'm not through.
Oh, I'm sorry. Please, Commissioner.
Okay, I'm sorry, I just got an email from Charles Cotton. 37 projects of the drainage issues are south of the bay, and there's 2 north of the bay. Okay.
Mr. Commander.
Thankfully, somebody brought up the EDA. And I think everybody on this board knows how close that is to me, but I don't see the EDA as being effective at this point. I held my tongue last year. Matter of fact, I don't even see him in the room. I understand the city of Defuniak Springs is looking at hiring their own EDA person and withdrawing their money from the EDA. I don't know what Freeport's planning on doing, but we need to take a real serious look. I mean, if it wasn't for these people sitting right here, we wouldn't have Mossy Head, you know? So I'm for either bringing that in-house or severely cutting that budget, because I do not see any results at all. Maybe y'all do, but I do not see any results. So that's some money that we're spending that bothers me at this point. Our firefighters, I do want to make a note about our firefighters. Whenever we hire these personnel rather than using part-timers, we are actually saving money, because these guys know how to work the system. Stan, I've talked about it. And by hiring regular firefighters and putting them on, then we will be saving a substantial amount of money from that. And also, I'd just like to look at the COLA. You have a 2% COLA and a 3% merit. I'd rather flip that and have a 3% COLA and a 2% merit, because we have folks out there now that are making it paycheck to paycheck. And I know 3% ain't going to make that much of a difference, but if we're going to increase their insurance, we've got to do something to help these people.
Yes, ma'am, and that can be structured however the board wishes to structure it.
I would rather see that flipped and give a 3% COLA and a 2% merit. That way they can help pay some of their...
Are we splitting that?
Commissioner Chapman, then I'll get to you,
Go ahead.
Commissioner Meadows. Commissioner Chapman?
In regards to what you just talked about on these pay raises, 3% or 4% to somebody making 65 or 70,000 is significantly more than the guy that's making 30. So I would suggest that we maybe hang like we did last year and put give the maximum amount to the lower paid employees. Those maybe, I think we used 60,000 as the cutoff last year. Maybe look at it as whether that's an adequate starting point, or if it needs to be increased a little bit, but whatever. But I believe the smaller paid employees should be getting the benefit of any raise that we could possibly give, and those that are in that upper pay class get the lesser amount.
And I would even go as far as to say, is anybody that's received a raise in the last 6 months would not get, somehow not get they've already gotten a substantial raise.
Commissioner
Well,
Meadows?
they have? I don't know anything about that.
Glad to tell you.
Yeah, now I lost my train of thought. Okay, so we're talking 3% 60 and under, 60,000 and under, like we did last year, and then 2% merit pay. Now, tell me what merit pay is and how does it get applied? How does somebody get merit pay? I mean, who does that?
Okay, I'm not advocating even a merit.
Okay.
And the reason for that is because we do not, at the present time, I believe, have a well-established, fair and impartial evaluation that could be used to show there is that need for a merit increase. I'm just saying 3% below 60, 2% above it, just as a COLA.
So what, though, how is merit pay, though, since it's in
Because I think you're a good
somebody's...
employee, and I write you up that you're a good employee.
Okay, so that's how it's
yeah.
done today, is just your supervisor says, I think you deserve a raise, I'll give you a 2%
Apparently
merit.
so.
Is that kind of thing? One thing, too, is about some employees, the county, especially during the time of a lot of development, a lot of growth, we get a lot of people rating our staff and trying to take them. Now, one of the things that I want to know is, if we have a staff member that we really want to keep, that person's in a key position, and we cannot afford to lose that person. Not that we can afford to lose anybody, but let's just say that, somebody came along and offered Stan, $100,000 more.
He ain't worth
Now, Now, yeah, see, he's going bye-bye. So, but, you know, just as an example, what if how do you handle situations like that? Because they do come up, because we've got a lot of other places who've realized that we have hired some really good people, and we have trained some really good people, and now that things are getting hot, they're coming along and offering them more money. So how do we deal? I would like something in there that gives somebody the flexibility to say, you know, we don't want to lose Stan, you know, can we give him another couple dollars?
How do we currently deal with that?
There's a policy that allows the manager of any of those particular people to allocate an increase up to 10%. Now, there's some language in there that we may need to tweak that says you expand their job duties, job titles, those type of things. But there is a mechanism in policy that allows that to occur today.
I'm sorry, one last question. So how does that occur? Does that have to go through HR? Does it have to go through us? Does it have to go, how does that happen?
The way the policy reads is that the manager, and that's not what it says, but the hiring a manager maybe, makes a recommendation to HR that we make this move based on these criteria, and if HR agrees that those things have been met, then it gets done.
But
So it's up to 10%.
Yes, ma'am.
that's good. But if HR says, no, we don't agree with this, then, and this, I did put this on the agenda for the next meeting, because there has been a case where if HR says, no, this is not, you know, in agreement, then it would have, as I read the policies, it has to come before the BCC for a vote, discussion and a
I think
vote.
that's correct. Yes.
So now, what criteria does the HR look at to determine if it is reasonable?
In that policy, whether there were substantial changes in duties, job description, job title, and that type of thing.
That still doesn't address.
I agree.
It
needs to
doesn't
be-
address if you've got somebody comes along and says, you know,
Yes, ma'am.
we're going to give Matt Carpenter, or we're going to give Wayne, or anybody, you know, we're going to poach them, and
And
these
you're
people-
you're absolutely right. As we see things on the uptick on the economy, the private sector sometimes
so
become
I
more
think we need a poaching policy.
But we also
anti-poaching.
need proof. I mean, it's one thing for Stan, for Stan to come to us and say, hey, you know, Preston's offered me a job making $250,000. Well, I want proof that Joe's, you know, not that I don't take your word, Stan, but, you know.
And a lot of this is other counties and other cities and other private. We just lost a planner to a private planning business, and back when we were doing this before, we lost almost a whole department too.
But then when it goes down again, they want to come right back.
Well, of course, but you know, this is the case. But anyway.
Yeah.
Take a look at that. Okay.
So, yeah, I agree with you. Let's forget the merit and let's put it all in a COLA.
Yeah, and that's what I was about to
Because
say.
I may think you're a good employee, you know, but others might not think so.
Any
Mr.
more
Vick?
commissioner comments before I open up to the public?
Just
LMA.
no merit. And
LMA. Question.
Where is she? You never
There
did
she is.
see her.
Can you, what'd you say?
She was standing up.
Were you standing up? I'm sorry. And before she speaks, let's all wish her happy birthday today.
Oh, happy birthday. Wow.
We had this budget session
Just for me, yes, ma'am.
Is it 55?
No, sir,
Oh, okay. Somebody lied to me.
they did.
They did. LMA, I know that you were at one time working towards an evaluation system.
Yes, sir.
Can you give me an idea of where you're at it today?
Yes, sir, we have launched it somewhat. I'm going around to commissioners. I haven't made it to your office yet, however, to show them. GIS developed us a system in-house that we think is going to work to get us started in that right direction. Because when we priced the products, they were going in upwards of $18,000, $20,000. So we wanted to just get something in place to get started on the merit path. So GIS developed a database program where if you have a good interaction with an employee, you know, or even perhaps a bad interaction, you could go in and notate that against, you know, that person with the criteria lining up with the needs improvement, meets expectations, or exceeds, which would line up then with our written evaluation system.
so that when if you got ready to do the eval, you can go back and look, well, LMA did good in this area throughout the year, but she, was lacking here. So then when you got ready to fill out my form, you could pull from that information to help fill out the form.
Well, we certainly need a better form.
And we have developed, we have new forms too that we'll be launching.
Well, that's the thing about it, and it's an old law enforcement thing. One poo-poo wipes out 6 attaboys real quick.
Right.
So, anyway, the policy manual.
Yes, ma'am, he said poo-poo.
Oh, P.O. Dina. It's, like P-O-O-P-O.
Okay, Commissioner Chapman?
What about, where are we at on the personnel manual
Well,
completion?
the last time we met is when I met with you and Mr. Jones, and I think you took your red pen to the entire document.
No, I wouldn't do that.
You did. I think we need to have a follow-up meeting, see where we are and going over
Thank
that.
you.
There were a few areas that we needed to put some serious attention to, and they were the areas that make your head want to explode.
Right,
And so
it was-
we're about through a big pack of BC powders, so we're getting close.
Okay, well, I know that it's a daunting task, having done it several years ago, but it's something I think is important. We just keep forward on it, please.
Okay,
That's all I got, Mr. Chairman.
thank you.
Mr.
And
Jones, did you have some comments?
I would like to make just a couple of comments. Commissioner Meadows, you're right. It is a basic budget. I mean, not that there was any doubt you were right, but we understand that. And our goal was to take the existing millage rate and formulate a budget that would support an organization operation to do the things outside of those normal operations. And to that end, to free up additional funding, that the support mechanism is in place. And as that funding comes in, it can be specifically identified for what we're going to use it for and not having to do that back of the house stuff. For instance, last year, I think it was the .08 mill that we passed for improvement South Walton stormwater, which generated about $1 million, and that money's there in whole.
It wasn't for South Walton.
Well, okay.
It was for
Infrastructure, right.
countywide.
Okay.
So let's
Fair enough.
tag that one.
Yeah, but the idea is that those funds are there in that whole amount to be used. So we clearly recognize that, and you made some great points on those areas that need improving. Commissioner Jones, you mentioned maintenance and equipment. As early as first of the week, Wilmer and I had that conversation to do a better job of tracking our maintenance to assure that we get the longest life out of that equipment. And then when we go to surplus, it's in enough shape that somebody will want to pay us for it. So that certainly is moving forward. Transfer station, we've had those conversations with Billy and Jeff, and that's in the process to look at what the appropriate structure would look like and how we can best utilize that facility for the benefit of the county. So we appreciate all the comments that have been made. We certainly stand ready to implement that which you direct us and make the changes as you see fit. Yeah, there's challenges out there, but we're ready to move forward with them upon your direction.
Public comment, anyone from the public?
Mr.
Come on up.
You better speed up, you're going to take a minute getting up here.
I'm sorry?
Nothing.
Deduct the time it takes somebody to get to the podium from what they're going to say.
For the record, my name is Bob Hudson. I'm the Executive Director of the Walton County Taxpayers Association. First thing I want to do is express my appreciation to Larry, to Melissa, to Jim Bagby, to the Sheriff's Department for the time that they made available to me to review the proposed budget that you have. One of the things that I have come to realize is that I think you need a process change. For example, we've spent an hour from you, the people that are setting the budget, telling Ms. Melissa and Mr. Jones what you want in a budget. I haven't heard anything specific, but yet we want to have another meeting, and I don't know what direction, and the public has no direction, what that shopping list that's not in the budget, what do they do? So my first suggestion, as a person who sat and did this for corporation who had $900 million budget was that you better know where you're going before you start asking, or you're duplicating a lot of time, energy, and effort. Second thing I want to mention real quickly is I don't know that people truly realize the population demographics change that is occurring in Walton County. In discussions with Mr. Bagby and discussions with Mike Atkinson, they piqued my curiosity on some things in terms of where Walton County is going to be in terms of population within the next short few years. Since 2010, we've had a growth in population of about 6,141 people, estimated, not exact. That's if you take that through 2020, which is 5 years away, you're going to have a population of 70,000 people in Walton County. If you go to the Haas Institute, those numbers change dramatically. The numbers that I'm using are U.S. Census Bureau numbers. If you go to the Haas, that number changes to 90,000 people. And so the thing that I say is, where is the planning and where is the execution to support 90,000 or 70,000 people in Walton County? In discussion with Mr. Bagby, he told me how many visitors he brought to Walton County. He also told me he wanted to bring 1 million more. And I'm saying, where are they going? We've built a stadium that seats 50,000 people, and we're inviting 1 million people to come sit in the stadium. I think Commissioner Meadows made some comments about people sitting on the side of the road, frustrated, everything that's there, and those are issues that this board, in my opinion, needs to look ahead on and needs to begin to address. For example, in 2014, BCC collected $4.5 million in BP funds, paid legal fees of $917,000, leaving a balance of $3.5 million. We gave the Sheriff's Department $970-something thousand, $987,478 for cars, leaving a balance of about $2.9 million. The TDC received $5.3 million, spent $1 million in legal fees with a net result of about $4.2. Those went to reserves, just as your unexpended went to fund balance. What is the plan to utilize those funds? Where are we going to use them? Are we just going to use them for all kinds of things, but what was the intent? I congratulate this board on Mossy Head. Mossy Head was a good idea that should have been done 10 years ago, in my opinion. But I do say we transferred $368,000 out of the landfill fund over into that fund. We've got a balance sitting there now of $678,000. Why don't we put it back if we need a transfer station? We spent $372,000 through July in legal fees, not counting Mr. Davis's fees. Time's up.
I wanted to continue.
Let me continue, then you can ask your question.
No, I wanted to continue. That's what I'm.
Yeah, please continue.
We spent about $372,000 in legal fees. Mark, I look at the DRAM reports, I look at the reports, and I see what's going on, and I disagree with you 100%. You need another person to handle public records requests. Because when I look at what the average time, it is a very long time to get what I would call a simple public records request. And I think some of those public records requests are truly not public records requests. They're public document generation requests, and they're sizable. Commissioner Meadows mentioned that she said we had received grants. Well, if my math is correct, we've received $23,377,430 in grants last year. Of those grant dollars, they went to roads and infrastructure of $22,754,000 north of the bay. And I am not saying north versus south. I'm saying reality. And only $623,000 was spent on infrastructure south of the bay. I agree with Commissioner Meadows. There needs to be a shift, in my opinion, within the state. Yeah. Think where we would be in Mossy Head. Think where we would be in roads in the northern part of the county did we not have that $22 million that was given to us through grants with the state. But I'm also saying, where's the revenue to do those similar type things in the southern part of the county? So I'm saying, I think we need to, and one of the things that I'm going to do is talk to our representatives about how we could address some of those issues south of the bay. We received about $6 million in stormwater grant from FEMA in 2013. We got a balance sitting out there of $3,800,000. That the deadline is 2/1/2016. I guess we're going to have a plan. I guess we're going to get it done. In addition to that, we've received $1.3 million in FEMA grants for the 2014 storm. We've encumbered $21,406, leaving a balance of $1.3. You need those FEMA people that you were talking, those stormwater crews, I'm assuming is what you're talking about. I do have a question. We have a balance in the preservation fee of $1.8 million. What is that money for? And why are we collecting it? If we have no plan to spend it, can we hire an environmental engineer out of preservation funds?
I think the preservation funds, the intent is that people are buying out, it's kind of like purchase of wetlands. People are buying out preservation because then they can get rid of it and develop the property, and that goes into a fund that was supposed to be, according to the policy, or whatever the policy or the code says, it's supposed to be funded to purchase like-kind land, like, in other words, some kind of land that would have some kind of environmental benefit, like an Angelo's parcel or a part of the Angelo's parcel, or I think that needs to fund the purchase of a site. I think that and the account's getting up there so that it's meaningful now, and that we could. We're looking at the Angelo's parcel. We're looking at a piece on Eastern Lake, and we're looking at some other pieces that I think that fund, and these pieces have those kinds of species on them, preservation type species that were taken out somewhere else. So that would be my thought on it. But I don't think we have any clear instruction on how that's to be.
As a developer, and I'm not, but I would say, why are you collecting this preservation fee from me if it's just going to sit in the bank? So I think you should take a look at that. I want to talk to you about the sheriff's office for just a few minutes. In talking to Mike and quite frankly, a next-door neighbor who happens to be a member of the Walton County Posse, I am truly understanding of their need for automobiles and how many cars they have that are over 130,000 miles and things of that nature. I'm also aware how much bullets cost now. It's just an anecdote. I had no idea that we could spend $90,000 on bullets and everything, but okay, that's fine. I understand. We want to hit who we're shooting at, and we want to have enough bullets, whatever it happens to be. But I do have a question in terms of 66 vehicles being replaced in addition to the ones we spent and bought in 2014, the $978,000. That sets up a perfect storm how many years from now? Just a few years from now, you're going to be faced with those vehicles wearing out. And so I'm saying, I don't know it's advisable to replace 66 vehicles in 1 year. I don't. You may have new vehicles, but you just set yourself up 4 years down the road, more than likely, to have that need as well. But yet, I know why it was done. because we had a decline in the ad valorem tax base, and the Taxpayers Association and everybody else was saying to you what? Lower the millage rate, keep the millage rate where it is. Not a bad theory until you run into reality of 70,000 people population plus 2.7 million visitors to this area.
3.4 million.
2.4?
3.4.
3.4, excuse me. It got even worse. I want to talk to you about the TDC. I met with Jim and his people the other day, and they were very helpful. And Bill, they gave me all the job descriptions and everything for those positions that you're talking about. I have no problem with what they're saying. I just have a problem when you go look at the Zender budget and all those people they're saying they're adding for public relations and things of that nature. You don't see a decline in over here. So I think you should look at that. I really don't know with the infrastructure that we have. You had the issue that came up with Hampton Inn, where this board chose not to approve Hampton Inn on 38 for one of the reasons it was used was what? We didn't have the infrastructure in place to support it. I don't have a problem with people coming to Walton County. I do have a problem when I can't get where I want to go because there's 3.4 million of them coming and we don't have a plan to build roads and things of that nature. I propose lowering the millage rate. I mean the bid tax. The Taxpayers Association have looked at it. If we were to lower the bid tax rate to 3.5 mils, carry it countywide, which there's proposals being looked at to do that, the TDC would actually generate more money than they had this year. They just wouldn't have all that much more, and they wouldn't maybe need some of those people that were there. But my main thing is we don't have this infrastructure to support it. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You have more people, you collect more bed taxes, more people, you can do more advertising, and more people come. So I'm saying until we can support, we should try not to cram 100,000 people in a 50,000 seat stadium. I go to Alabama football games, and I don't want them selling more tickets than there are seats that are there. Last thing I want to talk about is TIF. I supported TIF initially, still support TIF, because I believe it does allow either the 331 corridor or those in the southern part of the county to say we want specific things addressed and we're willing to set aside money for those specific things. I realize that you've only got $1.2 million, and if you give $750,000 in COLA, by the way, Mr. Bagby already has COLA built in his budget. I don't think you do in yours, so I don't know whether that 750 is known or not. It wouldn't affect? Okay. Because it appears that the sheriff has COLA in his budget bill, but it's all COLA. He says, I'm not going to do anything in terms of merit because he doesn't have what he believes is structure in place to do that. I've stood before this board as an individual, and I need to make clear that this is my individual position that's important. I'm willing to pay more tax if we address infrastructure. If we can't address infrastructure, then I'm not willing to pay more tax. And I'm not willing to bring more people here until we have that. I support your efforts. Those are my thoughts and comments, and I appreciate everybody sharing data with me and things of that nature. When we leave this meeting today, I hope that Mr. Jones and Melissa have a clear direction for what they want to see in the budget when you review it on July the 14th. That's a short time without direction. If they have to go around and meet with each and every one of you and say, what do you want, what do you think? So hopefully today we'll get that done. I'm not talking north and south. I'm talking Walton County. Everything that happens in the north is good for the south, and everything that happens in the south is good for the north. But reality is reality. I sent each and every one of you a thing to close 30A on July the 4th. That was a joke, really. I got one response. We have a hard time doing the small things, much less something this big. And I understand that. But other than just fulfilling the basic needs, I think this board needs to look ahead. It needs to have a plan, and hopefully this is the beginning, Larry. It's good meeting. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Any other public comment? Mr. Preston, Major Preston, please come up.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, thank you. I'll be brief. Mr. Hudson brought up a good point on the 66 vehicles. I would like to speak to that just for a moment. As you'll recall, the board was gracious enough to grant us with some of the BP funds that we were able to use for approximately 25 law enforcement vehicles a year ago. Those vehicles now have anywhere between 30 and 60,000 miles on them in 1 year. The 25 that we replaced is 10% of our total fleet, which is 277 vehicles. If we were replacing only 10% of our vehicles a year, it would take us 10 years to turn over vehicles. And at the rate that we run those vehicles, there's no way that vehicle is going to last 10 years, no matter how much money we spend in additional maintenance to those. So the capital outlay proposal from the Sheriff's Office of the $2.25 million is for 66 vehicles, not only patrol but also administrative vehicles that will help us right the ship. Now, Mr. Hudson is exactly right. What do we do when those vehicles reach their end of life? We have been trying to develop some things, even though we're a cost center and not a profit center. We have been trying to be creative in what we've been doing in things like the jail and taking on a contract with the Escambia County, housing some of their inmates that will eventually go away when they get their facility built. But in the meantime, we're generating some revenue from that. We're also in negotiations with the Department of Corrections, in which we hope that we can generate some revenue in housing some of those inmates. We're hopeful that with the capital outlay that we've requested by the board, if you grant that we're able to right the ship, and ongoing we're able to use those incremental revenues in addition to any funds we're able to squeeze out of our normal operating budget towards the end of the year, as we've done in the past, to pick up a couple of vehicles here and there and kind of maintain status quo. We just really need the help in getting the ship back upright. Once it's upright, we really feel confident that through our business processes and some of the things that we're trying to do, that we're going to be much better off in the future. And we're very hopeful that we won't have to continue to come back every 2 to 3 years with our hands out saying, we got to have vehicles. In just a span of 2 weeks in this last hot weather spell, we lost 8 vehicles due to air conditioning age. Now, none of us like to be without or in a vehicle without air conditioning, but I want you to think for a minute to a deputy who's wearing almost 60 pounds of gear, including a bulletproof vest, a dark green uniform, and their safety from heat stroke, from heat exhaustion, and those kind of things. So it's not just our ability to serve our community and to respond to calls for service in a timely manner when lives are on the line, but it's also the safety and the comfort and the convenience of our employees as well. So I appreciate the opportunity. I'm happy to address any questions you may have regarding any areas of our budget.
Thank you, Major.
Thank you.
Mr. Bagby? Is this public comment or TDC?
TDC, Commissioner, thank you. Public comment, I think y'all are doing a great job. But the TDC, I didn't want to take away to be, and I appreciate Mr. Hudson's observations and feedback. We did have a good meeting with him. The visitors we are trying to bring, I know y'all know this, but I want to make sure the public knows this. We have doubled the shoulder season attendance visitors in the last 5 to 10 years over the core season. And so when we say we want to add visitors, we're not adding visitors in the 10 weeks where, the week before Easter and the week after Easter and the 8 weeks from Memorial Day to the middle of August or whatever. What we are looking to do is add visitors here, because one of the problems that was very pronounced this past year, restaurants, the service levels went down from what our visitors expect, and remember who our visitors are. They went down. Why? Because we're so used to, we hire seasonal help and then they go away. If you're paying a lot of money to rent a house down on 30A, and you have to wait an hour to get served because they don't have the help there. So what we're trying to do is ameliorate the impact of tourism over 12 months as opposed to over 10 to 12 weeks. And so, yes, we do believe we can grow tourism, but not during the summer. So I don't want anybody to think that we're going to add 10,000 cars 4th of July. We're not. We don't have the space, even though there is a lot of building going on in South Walton. So I just want to make sure that we didn't miscommunicate with Mr. Hudson or with y'all on what the intent there was.
Any other public comment? Any additional commissioner comments?
Yeah, I did receive an email from one of our engineers who's doing the stormwater, and he says that the calculations are $31 million in stormwater cost, 2 projects north of the bay and the balance of them south of the bay. So that's just a number that we thought might be 40, but it comes in at 31 at current market prices. 31.
Okay. Staff, do you understand the issues that need to be addressed before the 14th?
I believe so. If it might make things go a little bit faster on the 14th if we could nail down just a couple of things. From what I hear, the board would like to look more at a COLA than merit increases in the coming year. If that's the wishes of the board, if you could give some direction on the amount and let me know, do we want to stick with the $60,000, take a look at that? I could run some numbers and firm those up before the 14th. And also the health insurance, if we want to leave that as is where it would increase for the board and the employees, or if we want to look at other options on that.
Okay, Melissa, there's Todd and there she is, Anna. I don't know about this insurance. I know it keeps going up every year, and I noticed there were some alternates in the packet here, but by saving on the premium side, you got more copays and out of pocket. And when you're talking about a low-paid employee, that's pretty significant. I think part of this Obamacare, people are probably finding out that, yeah, I'm getting it. I got insurance, but whenever I have to use it, I've got a heck of a copay or an out-of-pocket expense that they cannot afford. So, Anna, Todd, y'all want to make any comments concerning that insurance? I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I stepped out there.
You mean heating?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
As a commissioners, Mr. Chairman, just to be clear, the proposal in the budget keeps the same coverage, whereby it's about $1 million increase. Quite frankly, that's covered. So if we decide to do something different, there could be some savings, but we actually have time to do that if that's a direction that you give us before we get to the budget hearings in September. And so if we generate any savings, we can certainly put in other areas of the budget. But
okay, Todd, when they were talking about Obamacare and all that, insurance premiums are supposed to go down. And it ain't happening.
That's correct.
Todd, put your name on the record, please, for the clerk.
Yes, I'm Todd Torgerson with Combined Insurance Services, and with me is Anna Causey.
Right, okay. What's the reason? I mean, I don't understand if they pitched all this thing and then decided to implement it and then turn right around and say it's going to go down, but it keeps going up, and up.
Well, if we're going to talk about Obamacare,
let's not
I won't have us out of here before lunch, I can assure you. But as far as your own group is concerned, it's really just a matter of the actuarial projections as to where your claims are expected to be. So when we look back over the last few years, we had a zero change, and then a +4. And in our business, that is very unusual. And this time around, we ended up with a +9.9 after some pretty difficult, but I would say fruitful negotiations with Florida Blue. So I think Mr. Chapman and Mr. Jones hit it pretty much right on the head when you're talking about the benefits, is that one of our goals when we are in this situation is to always produce a set of plans that will result in pretty much a no change in rates. And we were able to do that this time. But the benefits themselves would create significant more out-of-pocket experience for the employees and their family members. So the plan that you have right now, the mix of plans, I think, from what we see in other places of the world, is pretty much mainstream. And I think you're in a relatively good spot, at least in terms of those rates and benefits.
Question on just insurance in general, or this new health care insurance. If like Commissioner Chapman says, you have people who, they're under, I think Blue Cross Blue Shield designated under the poverty level for one person is if you make under $47,000, according to them, you're in the poverty. So, and they said, well, you could apply for this or that. Can people apply for other funding if they are, in fact, under those levels?
Well, that's the financial qualification is just one piece, Commissioner Meadows.
Okay.
The other part of the puzzle is whether they are offered quality health insurance, qualified health insurance where they work.
Okay.
And they are offered that coverage here,
That
so that
excludes
precludes them from subsidy eligibility.
Okay, I got you.
And
So
the other hook, of course, is that if the employer of your size doesn't offer the coverage, then there are fines to the employer. So
right, exactly. Yeah. So what's cheaper, fines to the employer or health insurance coverage?
On balance, benefit dollars are a lot less expensive than payroll dollars.
Yeah. Surely there's a way to figure out, because I saw a list of some of the things that, that were, in other words, we had 125 people that, if I'm reading this correctly, that had amount paid in excess of thresholds of $2.7 million.
Right.
So, I guess we're not going to skin that cat today, but anyway, I think we need to think about that. Put Stan on it and see what he can do. But and I've noticed too that the hospitals had to renegotiate with Blue Cross Blue Shield because I don't think they were getting. So that I think that's a problem too. Is the doctors and hospitals are not getting reimbursed enough money to. One of my doctors is just going out of business because she said it's not even worth it. I can't make enough money. I can't run an office because of my expenses and because of the health insurance. So a lot of doctors are just going, we're not going to take health insurance anymore. You pay us out of pocket at the door and we'll take you. So, yeah, health care is headed south, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Commissioner.
Todd, in reference to this 9% increase, is that just industry-wide, or is it based upon our loss ratio?
It's based entirely on your own claims utilization. Right?
What is the industry generally running?
The trend line, the pricing trend, which would, I guess, equate to an average, is around 12% or so without any benefit changes. Some of the articles that you'll read on some of the Obamacare plans that are coming up for renewal are significantly higher, the ones in the individual market. So,
yeah. I mean, insurance is worth, I don't know, upwards of $10,000 a year, I think, per individual now. I mean, as a benefit package, I know we pay $6,100 plus or minus a piece, but it's huge. So, anyway.
The issue is, as long as we have kind of an insatiable need or desire for the highest quality medical care, which really for a region like ours that we're living in here, we do have access to excellent medical care, insatiable desire for it, and the cost of those services and products keep going up exponentially, and you throw those two things together, there's only one way for medical insurance costs to go, and that's north. Now, among the things that your team is doing here is embarking on a good wellness program to engage the employees, to have a snapshot of their own medical risk factors and some things that they can do about it. So that's really a win-win for the employees in the county here. So we're excited about that and hope that it gains some real traction.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate working with you.
Commissioner Meadows.
Yeah. Can I, this would be, you can put this down as Cindy's request and then run tabs on this and then, can keep it separate if you want to. But I would like y'all to run these numbers, add the COLA in, add 100% of the TIF in for now. Let's start at 100%, okay? Add in 1 FTE for legal, 1 more FTE for planning, which would be an environmental planning. Let's see, put the landfill, pay for the landfill out of the landfill account, pay for EDA out of the Mossy Head Industrial Park account.
So you don't think South Walton gets any benefit from EDA?
Well, so far, no.
Well, I think you're wrong there.
Let's see, Mossy Head Industrial Park, pay back the amount that came from that to the landfill account, and see how much.
Do you not like the success up there?
Wait. I'm not done. And run what that would be. Run out what that would cost and what it would add to the millage rate, if you would, just for starting points.
Mr. Hudson, did you have another question?
Wow.
You raised your hand. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah. Just real quickly, Commissioner Meadows added a lot of things that I wanted to see if y'all were going to make any change on. The other one that I want to know, is there any issue or any desire by y'all to look at lowering the bid tax to 3.5 cents? That would impact your budget because of your admin costs and things of that nature.
But that's really something that can be done at any time. What we're faced right now is the property tax rate with the July 15th deadline for establishing a preliminary one. I think we can come back when we have a full hearing on that.
But that's part of our budget is how much they're going to collect.
It is,
the
but
budget
we can
next
adjust
year.
the rate down anytime during the year, whereas on the ad valorem, we're faced with advising for the trim notices by July 15th.
I agree with that, but I think when we're talking budget, we're talking budget, and I think lowering it 0.5 cent is a good idea, because I think we need to look at the quality of experience that we're providing our guests.
And Jim, I appreciate Jim coming forward and saying he's trying to move. There's $3.9 million left in the funds that were collected
Emerging
markets,
markets.
and so he's got to think about 900,000 of that and things of that nature. But it truly is becoming to be about the experience that you have.
Yeah.
As much as it is anything else. But.
It is, and me being down there all the time and hearing on from everybody, I think that 0.5 cent would raise as much money, and then if things got bad, you could always raise it, bump it up again. It's something that that nobody's going to really. You're not going to see any. You're going to barely notice that it's 0.5%. So, however, we need to address that, whether it's in the budget meeting or a meeting thereafter. I would be in favor of that.
Yeah, that would be how do we address it? But I mean, I'll bring the EDA back up. As I say, I have been very unsatisfied with it for quite some time, and as far as I'm concerned, I may be the only one sitting here. We can save that money by either bringing it in-house or completely doing away with it. So I'm pretty sure that the city of Definiak Springs is going to.
Mr. Jones.
I believe that rate is codified in the ordinance, so that if you want to make a change, we'd have to advertise for the ordinance amendment. And if that's something you want to consider at your Tuesday's board meeting, we can get that on the agenda for you to discuss if you'd like.
And did we set an amount for the COLA? If you had 2 for merit and 3, 2 for COLA and 3 for merit, I'd like to see 4 for COLA.
Yeah,
Yes,
I agree
ma'am.
with that.
Okay.
Do 4 for COLA.
Well, run those. Let's run all these numbers and see where we end up.
Okay.
But now, I didn't realize that the TDC and the sheriff had already. What did you put in your budget for a COLA, Mr. Bagby? 2. Okay. Well, then yours is already set.
What is the cost of living increase index right now? What is it nationally, or what is that? Does anybody know what that is?
Yeah, well, they had reported that they expected it for this year to be about 1.7%.
Okay, so I think, in all fairness, we ought to look at. I mean, I think 4 might be a little much. I think, cost of living increase 2 or 3%. I think is, in my opinion, reasonable.
Well,
It's because they're going to be paying more for their insurance, so I was trying to offset that a little bit. But you can run the numbers and see where we are.
I can do it
They're not
both
going to be
ways.
paying more for their insurance. We're paying for their insurance. The
I
county's
thought-
paying 100%.
Didn't
Going
someone
up
say it was going to,
9%
there's,
for family
It's
coverage.
only the family coverage that they'll be paying more for. And I mean, I think that with all due fairness, covering them 100% is adding about 10 grand to their benefit package. So if their family goes up a little bit, I think that that's just something that everybody nationwide is bearing. And I'm not sure that that the county can continue to keep up with that.
why not the 4% under 60,000 and 2%?
That's what I was just going to ask if y'all want to ask if you want to
Over
use about the same
60,000.
split. Okay,
That's-
I can run the numbers
that's
on
an
that.
idea.
Just run a bunch of different numbers and let's see what it turns out.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
And that's what we included was, our understanding was that was what was going to be initially recommended, but that was a couple of months ago. And so it's changed, and, we will adjust our numbers accordingly. The only comment is we've been working on the budget since basically April, because our process, we go to the directors and ask them, what programs do you want to do? And so to take a 12.5% cut in a 2-week period and to go back and try to actually work through a budget in a logical, professional process, if that's what we're going to do, that's, we're going to execute to the best of our ability. Our problem is getting you a number, on July 15th or whenever for the 1st of September to go through the whole budget process with, other than just taking 12.5% across all the.
But Jim, your number is crucial for the September public hearings.
Right.
The number we've got to have for July 14th and 15th is the property tax number, which doesn't impact.
Right. I understand the legal requirement. I'm just saying there's 4 months worth of work that's in the budget that we sent to OMB for our recommendation. And so if you're going to lower it, on the 14th or whatever, or today, whatever, we really need to know, because other than just taking the easy way out and saying cut everything 12.5%, which is not the smart way to do it, that's a lot of, and I know you understand this, Mr. Chairman, that's a lot of work in a $22 million budget.
Well, my understanding is that on the 14th, we're going to have it for discussion to decide if we want to change that ordinance. Then you
Okay.
got to change the ordinance. So at that point in time, you'll have 10 weeks to really come up with an adjusted budget.
Okay.
And I know in August, we were going to talk about the adding North TDC prioritizing. I believe it was August.
Right.
This might be a good discussion for August,
Yes, yeah.
instead of trying to rush through with so many other things going on.
Mr. Hudson, quickly, yes, please. Come on up.
The 3.5 does not
Come on.
lower his budget. It does not lower it. It exceeds what he collected this year. So I'm not sitting here saying we're going to cut people and advertising and things of that. He just has to make some prioritization, which everybody has to do.
And we talk about it every year, about after this budget hearing is over, let's having a workshop and start talking about the MRF and about, all this stuff. And we need to do this before budget comes up. And we got to, in the middle of the year sometime, we need to have a all-day workshop on priorities and how we get them met.
Right, and one more comment. When we start doing the restore, the settlement came forth, EDA is going to be a vital, important part of that. So if we need to go a different direction, I know I'm going to meet with Bill this afternoon about possibilities of the money we're getting, how much money we're getting, what our projects look like, and he's already mentioned to me that EDA is going to be a vital, important part of that. So we need to really be thinking about what we want to do in this area.
And that's why, do we bring it in-house? Because I believe he was directed at our last budget to come around and talk to all of us as commissioners, and he hasn't darkened my door in a year.
Yeah, ditto on that.
Commissioners, we're reading through the BP settlement. Just, we've settled our economic damages through our lawsuit. But you may get a call. We may have to have an emergency meeting to adopt the settlement for later purposes. I don't think that's necessary, but I'm checking, and if you do get a call, that's what that's about, okay?
Any further commission comment? We're going to continue this then until 2 o'clock on the 14th at the south end.